We see you, we support you, we will not be silent, and we will not continue to stand idle.
Hello and welcome to the watching brief for the week of the 9th of December 2024. This week I'm flying solo again because we have a watching brief interview special with Professor Umberto Albarella of Sheffield University, an old friend of the show, and with some very interesting and pertinent things to say about the state of archaeology, not just at Sheffield, but in the UK and in fact internationally. That comes in a minute. First of all, as always, we ask you, if you like the watching brief, if you appreciate what we do, please like and follow us on YouTube. You can follow the watching brief on the Archaeosoup channel and the separate watching brief channel, which we've set up and we're trying to populate. You can also support Archaeosoup on Patreon, and you can support the Pipeline, which is the website that I run. You can buy us a Ko-fi or a beer, or, being the time of year, a glass of mulled wine. But any support you can give us, we'd appreciate. We love providing this content. We want to keep on providing it free to air, and any help you can give us is hugely appreciated. So now over to the main event. It's an interview with Professor Umberto Albarella, zooarchaeologist at Sheffield University, and it's an interview we recorded earlier this afternoon. Well, we're delighted to welcome again to the watching brief an old friend of the show, Professor Umberto Albarella of Sheffield University. We had wanted to talk to Umberto anyway because this is the first academic term that Sheffield has been without its archaeology department. Umberto was central to the campaign to try and save archaeology, undergraduate archaeology at Sheffield. The university carried through its proposal to remove the department from the university and spread some of its activity across other departments, other academic departments, particularly things like zooarchaeology, which is Professor Albarella's speciality. And then on the 3rd of December, the Sheffield Zooarchaeology short course Facebook group pasted a notice saying that they were sad and disappointed to inform the group members that they would no longer be offering zooarchaeology short courses at Sheffield. Zooarchaeology being, as I said, one of Sheffield's specialisms. So that we thought that made it even more important that we catch up with Umberto and see what is actually going on. So, I mean, on the wider context, first, Umberto, how has the transfer of archaeology to the wider university community and the loss of its own identifiable department, how's that been carried through, and has it worked so far?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here again. It's a pleasure to see you again. So thanks, Andy. Hello, everybody. Yes, trying to answer your question. In a nutshell, the transfer is absolutely disastrous. Okay, there is no other way to put it. The university management has tried to present it as some kind of success in terms of that archaeology is still there, but organized in a different way. But in reality, first of all, we have been dispersed between two different schools. You know, it's so some of my colleagues have gone to history, and I am with a couple of other colleagues and the technicians for the department in biosciences. So that split is not helpful. But there are incredible uncertainty about our future teaching. There has been no clarity about that. Interference which had only been negative. And we have moved administratively, but we haven't moved physically. And the issue of our physical move has also been incredibly messy with a lot of uncertainty. And you can imagine that, you know, we are coming from this long phase in which we had to basically accept our department was being dismantled. And now on top of that, there is all this uncertainty about the future. I mean, the reality is that without central management interference, although the situation of the collapse of the Department of Archaeology is unsatisfactory, there are plenty of opportunities for us to integrate with people in biosciences and people in history. So if they would just let us get on with a job, but despite we are very unhappy about the fact that we don't have a department anymore, we just could get on just fine. But the interference from the center continues to be extremely negative.
Now, coming to that, you use the word interference. I think if I was if I was Sheffield University, I would say that the university has made no secret that under its vice-chancellor, Colonel Lamberts, the university is under a great deal of financial pressure, and that the changes that have been made have been driven by that, including, in fact, the latest cut to the short courses, which are offered to offer opportunities to people to take part in zooarchaeology, for example, short of a degree. So it's specialised. You can explain perhaps better than I can, but it's specialised short courses on specific areas of zooarchaeology, which are designed for interested members of the community, professionals short of being a professional osteoarchaeologist, that kind of thing, if I'm right in saying. And again, just to give a little bit of context to our viewers, the statement on the Facebook page says that what the university is asking for is, instead of these short courses attracting audiences, users, participants, students from a broader community, it wants you to concentrate on recruiting postgrad students from the immediate catchment of biosciences. So people who are doing MSCs and so on, it wants them to convert to higher degrees within the university, which obviously has an advantage in terms of university income. How do you see that plan working out?
Not very well at all, in the sense that absolutely. Okay, let's put it in the broader context that you provided, Andy. The financial crisis of the university. Well, you know, first of all, let's clarify: this is a crisis in profit. It's not a crisis in absolute funding. You know, because the university has got very substantial financial reserves. Okay, so it's a crisis in profit basically because the University of DC has recruited a lot fewer Chinese students than in the past. In fact, the decline has not just happened this year, has been coming. We have been saying for a very long time that it was just not a sensible strategy to put all the eggs in the basket of the Chinese students, you know, just assuming that, you know, British higher education should be funded on the basis of our successful recruitment of Chinese students. Didn't seem sensible. Now, this is a nationwide problem, but Sheffield has been hit particularly badly. And we, and when I say we, I mean myself, many colleagues, and our union, we are absolutely convinced that Sheffield has been particularly badly hit because Sheffield has gained a very bad reputation in the last few years because of its management. And the closure of archaeology has been part of this process. And also, let me clarify something. Everything that we do and all our battles are only aimed to protect our university. It's because of loyalty of our university. So not to protect myself or my specialism or even my department or archaeology, whatever, but is to protect the university. Now, going to your question about the short courses, how is this related to all this? Well, absolutely, we want, and I think there is a fantastic opportunity that we are going to use to basically try to teach some of the archaeology elements to the large cohort of biosciences students. And in fact, we are totally excited about that. That's a really good thing to do. the fact is, this has absolutely nothing to do with our short courses. And it has been presented like by the management, like either you do this or you do other things. Why we have organized short courses? Well, we have organized short courses for many years, 13 years, because we believe in a university that has duties and responsibility towards the wider community. So we have opened the doors of the university to people coming from all over. The short courses have been incredibly successful in bringing lots of people coming from many different walks of life, from amateurs to university professors, and it's provided the opportunity to have a very good network of contacts, and also at the same time great teaching experience for our PhD students. It has been a great team building exercises for us, and basically there have only been positives. And because the universities only seem to understand the issue of money, I mean, the short courses have also brought some money that we have used to keep our lab and reference collections going. And now so basically they were win-win situation for everybody, absolutely everybody. So if the university is trying to solve its financial situation, I mean, they really should act in a completely different way, because if we want to talk just business and nothing else, interpret the university as business, which is not the way I interpret it, but let's use their language, let's use their mentality. I think this is a crazy way to go about, and this is for many other things. The way they have responded to this whole so-called financial crisis has been extremely detrimental to the university, and the cancellation of the short courses is just one of the many examples of something that is done that makes no sense. Obviously, for me, it doesn't make sense ethically, and it doesn't make sense in terms of what the mission of the university should be. But even if we think only financially, it makes no sense equally, So that's the situation in which we are in, I'm afraid.
I remember when we first started covering the situation at Sheffield, too many years ago now, but one of the things that I think struck us and why we wanted to stay with the story and why we've come back to you this afternoon is what we saw really as a disconnect between you at the smart board, the teachers in the lab, and university senior management. And that wasn't just your department, as was that was across the board. The University College Union was in dispute, in long-term dispute nationally as well as locally. How is that situation resolving itself? Or has the situation in terms of consultation with management improved, or is it still very fractious as we've seen it in the past?
If possible, it has got a lot worse, in the sense that it seems that the style of the management is basically having zero communication with staff and students, and they organize some kind of sessions in which they just talk and they provide information. They ask people to provide very kind of formalized questions that they will never answer. But the style of management in the last few years has just been. I mean, the closure of our department has been a classic example of something that has been implemented basically without proper consultation. But everything else that management has been doing in the last few years has been characterized by unwillingness to communicate, which is the most appalling form of management you can think of. And sometimes you have to think, are these people just incompetent, or is there an agenda behind the way they work? Because it's so totally counterproductive for the university. But I'll just give you two quick examples of the unwillingness to communicate that are not are not directly related to archaeology. One is, for instance, the fact that the University of Sheffield has seen the longest lasting student encampment asking for a ceasefire in Palestine. Okay. And all the students were asking was to talk, to have a conversation with management, and they were constantly refused that. And the only way in which management responded was to try to bully them. Okay, so that's just one example that just shows the way they respond. The other thing is recently we had a union meeting, okay, of the three unions together. And, when I go to union meeting, it's normally there are 40 or 50 people there. At this meeting, there were more than 1,000 people. Okay. And for the third time in the last few years, a motion of lack of confidence in the management was voted on, and more than 900 people voted in favor of this motion. Okay, that's a very substantial number of people. Okay, and any decent management should have felt the need. Okay, let's talk about this. Why don't you have confidence in us? So let's talk at least to the union committee about it. And the union has repeatedly asked for a conversation, and they have repeatedly refused it. And so they just say, well, no, we're not interested in talking to you. I mean, honestly, I come from southern Italy. I come from a very different place. I lived in this country for more than 30 years, and I'm very grateful for the fact that this country has welcomed me. And I lived in Sheffield for 20 years, and I love the city, and I love my university. And it is my duty to condemn this action because it goes against my university, against my city, and against my country, because that's the country I regard as mine too, not just because I'm a British citizen too, but just because I have lived more than half of my life here, and I love it. I have to say that the kind of grassroots support to our campaign from the archaeological community has been excellent at the height of the campaign, and it has remained so because people keep sending us messages of solidarity. For instance, now that we have announced the short courses are going to be discontinued, we have been inundated by messages of solidarity. And so many academics, individual colleagues, learn society, organizations like that. Yes, they have offered us a lot of support. We have heard much less from kind of more institutionalized organizations. But, I'm not too concerned about that. These are not necessarily the people from which we expect support. For us, it's much more important to get the support from the grassroots.
That kind of testimony, I think, highlights the issues that I'm sure colleagues are feeling across the sector. You've touched on, you've touched on the issue of identity and government and so on there. In a wider context, certainly the previous government finally under Rishi Sunak, who lost office in July, universities seem to be coming under pressure to, for example, eliminate what ministers often termed as worthless degrees. And by that, they didn't actually mean culturally worthless. They just meant didn't return enough didn't return more than the average wage to a graduate within about 5 years. That seemed to be the benchmark, which obviously in low paid professions like archaeology, as well as many of the arts, that seemed to be leading to what a number of people in online forums are calling a hashtag bonfire of the humanities. That local university managements were taking decisions that had strategic implications for sectors like archaeology, because of not because of even a government policy, but because of just sort of steers in the media and so on. Have you felt under similar pressure at Sheffield?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I mean, it's clear that the closure of the Department of Archaeology, the crisis of the University of Sheffield, is also the crisis of Sheffield Hallam, the other university in Sheffield, and many other universities goes across the country, is part of a wider approach to, well, I should say to higher education, I could say to education, in fact, I could say to the whole society, is basically, we are moving gradually towards a situation in which these people who are in positions of power and that they have embraced 100% the concept of this neoliberal economy, and just what they think is the university should become some kind of training grounds for jobs that they regard to be useful, and then just leaving a few elite university for the rich kids to go to. And Sheffield, one of the reasons why I love Sheffield University is because it's a university that has traditionally served the working class. And it's a typical target. And just to say, oh, these people shouldn't be studying archaeology, shouldn't be studying philosophy, they shouldn't be studying languages. They should study something that is practically useful for us. Who are they to study all these subjects? So they should just be for the elite. Of course, you will never hear any politicians using the words I have just used. It's all hidden, it's all part of a broader agenda. But if you read articles also produced by top politicians in the last few years about where the directions in which the university should go, and you can see that's the direction in which they are going, and what is university management doing about that? Well, these are just people who have been placed in that position just to do a job. If you like, they are just useful idiots put in that position, and just doing the dirty job because they think it's going to produce something useful for them. They are not working in the interest of the university or the wider society. They are just working in their own personal interest. And I'm afraid that this is what the neoliberal society generates.
Can I just widen that out slightly, maybe? Obviously, in biosciences, in zooarchaeology, you're at you and your colleagues are at the sort of the cutting edge of research into things like how the human species, how other species have adapted and evolved over centuries, the impact of environment and climate change and so on. That again is obviously a very high profile issue at the moment. So, we've just seen President Trump elected again in the United States, who's likely to downplay the scientific element in education, and particularly when it comes to things like climate, promoting fossil fuels, probably withdrawing again from the Paris Accords and so on. I know the environment's a particular concern of yours as well. Are you concerned that the work you do and the work that colleagues do, given that archaeology is a collaborative science and is international, are you concerned for how those events might impact on the work of you and your colleagues?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that everything that is going to happen in this country will be affected by the result of the American elections, and many of these people have been emboldened, obviously, by Trump's election. Having said that, and people who have integrity will never stop fighting, and I think it's the future of our planet, which we are talking about. It's not small issue, which we just can't give up. So. The whole debate about the climate crisis revolves about the fact that science has demonstrated the poor state of the planet, the very dangerous state of the planet. And as you said, I think archaeology has a big role to play, and certainly the work that people like me doing just looking at past human-animal relationship, but obviously people look at environments and all that. I mean, it's all part of this investigation to try to understand who we are in relationship to the environment around us and the planet, which is our role as species. The problem is that many academics now operate a little bit like politicians. So they just think about what is going to happen tomorrow, but not the day after tomorrow. And that's one of the big problems. But make no mistake, we will never give up. We will always try to create knowledge to inform these issues as much as we can.
And as we sort of start to wind up our conversation, we're approaching the end of the year. We're approaching the midwinter solstice. It's a time for looking forward and looking back. Looking back, first of all, would you have handled any of the controversies over the archaeology department at Sheffield any differently in retrospect? Or do you think basically in the end, what happened was going to happen regardless of what you and your colleagues and the student body said?
Listen, Andy, I'm incredibly proud of the campaign we fought. I think at the end of the day, we won that campaign. I mean, they were always going to close to the department, and we knew that. But that's never a reason to stop fighting, because, first we forced them to change the language, okay, from some sort of useless bunch of academics. At some point, we became very valuable, but we had to be organized in a different way. So we forced them to change the language. We saved the jobs, okay, which is no small thing. But there is something far more important than that. I think that we show to the world that it's possible to fight back. And I think the executive was humiliated in front of the world. 50,000, almost 50,000 signatures on our petition, more than 2,000 letters of complaint. The whole world up in arms against this, and it still continues. People don't forget what has happened. So I think by running our campaign, I think every day in which we did something, it was a victory. And so I'm immensely proud of what was done. Yes, would have we changed something? Maybe some of our strategy weren't always right, but I think all in all, we did get it right. I think our unions, many people around the country, even internationally, they still use us as an example of what can be done. And just a bunch, a very small group of academics and students just mounting that kind of campaign. And then, of course, important, essential, a huge amount of solidarity. So I think that's my message. Don't leave people who are fighting alone, okay? Because that is the worst possible crime. I mean, you just have to support them. And we at the time felt that our campaign was so strong that persuaded us that we need to be supported. And I think we would be much worse off at the moment if we hadn't fought it. If we hadn't fought that campaign. I mean, obviously, I'm not the best friend of the executive. I'm not the most popular person in the university from the executive point of view, but who cares? I think what is important is integrity, and I think we have shown that in abundance.
And if anyone's interested in just reminding themselves what actually happened at Sheffield over that period that Umberto's just been referring to, we will be linking to articles and episodes of the Watching Brief where we covered the story, which we did extensively. But it's time to look forward as well. We're looking forward to a new year. We're just under 6 months into a new government. Is it more of the same? Will there be changes? Do we know? And obviously we have the Trump inauguration on January the 20th, and that will be a benchmark across the planet. How do you see things developing for you and your colleagues and those wider issues that you're concerned about going forward?
I mean, so far we haven't seen much change due to the, despite the new government. It seems things seem to be moving in the same direction. But however, I think I welcome the fact that you said it's we have to look at the future. We have to look at this positively, and I think despite the situation sometimes is a bit depressing. But I do think that I think that when things get very bad, and they are pretty bad at the moment, sometimes there is an opportunity for people to gather the courage to do something about it. And when I'm in Sheffield and also elsewhere, I'm often in the streets, demonstrating and meeting people on so many different issues, and just see the activity. It's something that is encouraging. I think that the situation is bad, but it can be changed. And in addition to the appalling language of, for instance, the executive of my university, I hear the much more kind of reassuring language of, for instance, of people who are active in our unions, and that gives me hope.
And that note of hope is probably a good note to finish on. So Professor Umberto Albarella of Sheffield University, thank you very much again for joining the Watching Brief.
Thank you very much for having me, Andy. Thank you. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
And that was the interview we recorded with Professor Umberto Albarella earlier. If you want to add anything to the things that we were discussing, make any comment, observation, how are things that Professor Albarella referred to being reflected in your experience, maybe at your university, please let us know. The Watching Brief is nothing if it's not a conversation. In the meantime, the Watching Brief will continue. We will be back in the next few weeks with a look at the British Archaeological Jobs Resource, the Badger Poverty Report, which came out a few weeks ago. And it gives a comment, shall we say, on the state of the archaeological profession in the UK as it perceives itself. And we have also got a little bit of a present for Christmas and New Year for you, which is a sort of exploration and tribute to perhaps one of our most well-known pseudo-archaeologists, fantasy writers, alternative historians, you name it. But anyway, we'll be back with that in the very near future. In the meantime, take good care of yourselves and goodbye.
We see you, we support you, we will not be silent, and we will not continue to stand idle.